You're tuning into Creepy Time, where we bring you chillin' creepy stories and eerie urban legends every day at 6 p.m. To support Creepy Time, please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments so we can discuss the story together. Now let's dive into today's tale. Rules of survival in the jungle. The smell hit me first. Mold, damp earth, decay. It seeped through the cracked windows of the old forestry truck as we bumped along the dirt road cutting through the dense wall of trees. Meadow Creek. The name sounded like it belonged on a postcard. In reality, it was just a smudge of gray lost in an endless sea of dark green. Jenkins, the grizzled ranger driving me to my new post, didn't talk much. Couldn't blame him. No one liked driving out here unless they had to. I'd been stationed for 3 years already, but something about this place felt wrong before I even stepped out of the truck. When we pulled up to the cabin, my first thought was that it looked abandoned. A sagging wooden roof, faded stone chimney, windows crusted with dirt that reflected the sunset like dead eyes. I stood outside, Jenkins beside me, both of us silent. Finally, he spoke. "Your new home," he muttered, then added, "Marcus was the last one stationed here." His tone made it clear that wasn't a good thing. I asked what happened to Marcus, but Jenkins avoided my eyes. He disappeared. That single word hung in the cooling air longer than it should have. Inside, the cabin was no better. Dust coated every surface. Drawers were empty. No personal belongings, no photographs, not even discarded uniforms. It was like Marcus had never existed. But under the edge of the fireplace rug, something caught my attention. A loose floorboard. When I pried it up, I found the only clue Marcus left behind. A notebook, handwritten. Inside, page after page of strange rules scribbled in shaking handwriting. Most were simple. Don't go into the woods after dark. Others more cryptic. Don't believe what you hear past the tree line. The final warning chilled me. If you hear your own name, run. I laughed at first, thought it was some hazing joke, a leftover from Marcus's breakdown. But the longer I stayed, the less funny it felt. That night, Jenkins gave me one last piece of advice before driving away. Keep your doors locked, and whatever you do, don't listen when the forest calls. I watched his truck's red taillights vanish into the trees, leaving me alone in that rotting wooden box. As the sun bled out behind the treetops, I finally understood why Marcus might have vanished. The first night should have been peaceful. It wasn't. Something circled the cabin. I heard it, slow footsteps crunching through dry leaves, always just far enough from the edge of my flashlight beam. And then a voice from the tree line, soft, familiar. It whispered my name, Andrew. At first, I froze. Then I remembered Marcus's rule. I didn't open the door, didn't respond. Just pressed my back against the wall, weapon shaking in my hand, heart pounding louder than the whispers outside. The voice kept calling until dawn. And then silence. I lasted 3 days before breaking the first rule. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. The voices didn't give me a choice. They started soft, creeping under the cabin's walls, slipping through the cracks around the windows. I resisted. I really did. But you can only listen to your own name whispered from the trees for so long before curiosity becomes a sickness. One night, I opened the door and stepped into the dark. The forest swallowed me whole. My flashlight flickered. My breath fogged the air like smoke. Every step sounded wrong, muffled, like walking through wet ash. Then I saw the clearing. The sacrifice stone, as Marcus's notebook called it, a black, flat slab older than anything around it. I wasn't alone. Figures stood around the stone, motionless, too tall, too thin. Their faces hidden behind carved wooden masks, and among them someone familiar, Marcus, pale, empty-eyed. His smile wasn't human anymore. When I ran, I didn't know where I was going. The trees shifted around me, trails disappeared, but somehow, at dawn, I found myself collapsed outside the cabin. Jenkins wasn't there. No one was. But the notebook waited for me, still open on the dusty table. Marcus's scrawled warnings burned into my mind like scars. Silas found me that afternoon. An old man with eyes that looked like they'd seen the end of the world. He didn't ask what I saw. He already knew. Instead, he gave me the real story. Long before settlers came, the indigenous tribes here guarded something buried deep in these woods. Not a creature, not a god, a gate, a thin place between worlds. And when it stirred, they fed it. Blood, rituals, sacrifices, not out of devotion, out of fear. When settlers came, they killed the keepers, took the land, but the gate remained, and now it was hungry. Silas didn't offer comfort, only truth. "You're not here to watch the forest," he said softly. "You're here because the forest called you." I didn't believe him. I couldn't. But that night, I dreamed of Marcus standing at the sacrifice stone, not trapped, not dead, waiting. And when I woke, I understood what Silas meant. The forest hadn't chosen Marcus. It had chosen me. The moment the voice said wrong, they moved. The masked ones surged forward, bodies too long, too thin, their carved wooden faces twisting as if alive. Marcus didn't lead them. He simply watched, hollow eyes tracking me as if recording my last movements. My body reacted before my mind did. I fired 3 times point blank into the closest shape and watched the thing jerk back, not from pain, but surprise, like it had forgotten it could be hurt. Another step back, then another. My hands were shaking, but I held my aim steady. I kept firing until the magazine clicked empty, and still, they advanced. I ran it away from the stone, but toward it. The rules told me to run from the voices, avoid the stone, hide before sunset. I was done obeying. If Marcus wanted me to take his place, he'd have to fight me for it. I reached the black stone and pressed my back against its freezing surface. The air around it was wrong, heavy like water, dense with something older than air itself. The shapes circled, but they didn't step closer. My breathing came ragged, but my mind was clear. That's when Marcus finally moved. He stepped forward, slow and deliberate, like he'd been waiting for this moment since I arrived. "Why didn't you run?" His voice wasn't human anymore. It rasped like wind scraping through dead leaves, and yet I heard something beneath it. Exhaustion, sadness, as if he didn't want this. As if he'd been trapped long before me, because I'm not like you. The words surprised me as I said them, but I knew they were true. Marcus shook his head slowly, almost regretfully. Neither was I. That's when I understood. The forest hadn't consumed him. It had broken him, piece by piece, until all that remained was a hollow shell obeying the rules to survive. I remembered Silas's warning. Most don't come back the same. Marcus hadn't come back at all, and unless I found a way to end this, I wouldn't either. I raised the empty pistol, knowing it was useless, but unwilling to show weakness. Marcus stopped barely 10 feet from me, his expression unreadable. "You can't win. It's already inside you." His voice cracked as if speaking hurt. "You heard the voice. That means it knows your name, and once it knows your name," he trailed off, looking past me toward the forest. "You belong to it." But that's when I remembered something Silas had said, something buried in the chaos of my fear. The rituals were meant to keep the gate closed. Not forever, just long enough. Long enough for what? Silas never finished that sentence, but standing there with my back to the sacrifice stone, I understood. Long enough for someone to find another way. "What if I don't follow the rules?" I whispered. Marcus flinched as if struck. The shapes behind him froze. Even the air felt different, thinner, and the forest itself seemed to lean closer, listening. Marcus's answer came like a confession. Then it'll kill you faster. Maybe that was true, maybe not. But dying fast sounded better than dying hollow. My choice was clear. I dropped the pistol. I'm not like you. Then slowly, deliberately, I stepped away from the stone and toward Marcus. The shapes hissed, backing away as if my defiance burned them. Marcus watched, motionless, until I stood just 2 steps from him. Kill me then. My voice barely broke the silence. But I won't follow. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Marcus, the man who wasn't a man anymore, whispered one final thing. I wish I could have said that. And then he attacked. His body moved faster than thought, arms outstretched, fingers like claws. I didn't dodge. Instead, I reached forward, grabbed his wrists, held them. And something strange happened. He stopped. His body trembled. His mask, his face twisted. And for just a heartbeat, I saw the man he used to be. His voice cracked again. Help me. I understood then that Marcus wasn't my enemy. He was my warning. The forest had hollowed him out, but not completely. Not yet. That's when the voice returned. Not Marcus's, not the thing circling us. The other voice, the real one. The one from the trees, from beneath the soil, from the spaces between thoughts. It whispered directly into my mind. Break the chain. The shape screamed as if burned. Marcus collapsed to his knees, and the stone behind me cracked, a sound like thunder from underground. I didn't know what breaking the chain meant, but instinct took over. I looked at Marcus, then the stone, then back. Maybe the stone wasn't a prison. Maybe it was a lock. So I did what every rule told me never to do. I touched it. The moment my skin met the stone, everything changed. Not in the way I expected. There was no blinding light, no roar of ancient gods, no sudden death. Instead, silence deeper than death itself swallowed the clearing whole. I couldn't hear the forest anymore. I couldn't hear my breath. I couldn't hear my heartbeat. Yet I was still standing, still alive. I felt the stone pulse beneath my palm, slow and steady, like the beat of something colossal buried miles beneath me. A heartbeat, not mine. Something else, something awake, something aware. Then I understood. The stone wasn't holding the monsters back. It wasn't a barrier to keep them out. It was a chain holding something in. And every ritual, every sacrifice, every ounce of blood spilled on its surface wasn't payment to the predators. It was reinforcement to the prison. All this time, we weren't feeding the hunters. We were keeping their master locked in the dark. And now, with my touch, the chain was fracturing. I should have pulled my hand away. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but instincts lie. Marcus had followed his instincts, followed the rules, obeyed the rituals, and look where it led him. The forest wasn't the enemy. The forest was the battleground. And I was standing at the center of a war no one even remembered was being fought. My fingers curled tighter against the cold, cracked surface of the stone. Marcus stirred behind me, his voice thin, broken, almost pleading. You don't understand. If it breaks free, there's nothing left. Maybe he was right, maybe not. But for the first time, I wasn't interested in what the old rules said. They'd failed him. They'd failed all of us. And if the forest wanted me dead, it should have taken me already. I pressed harder. The stone pulsed again, weaker this time, like something suffocating. Then I spoke. Not a chant, not a prayer. Just 3 words I wasn't sure I believed. Let me go. At first, nothing happened. Then the world shuddered, a deep tremor that rattled the bones beneath my skin. The masked ones shrieked in unison, staggering back from the clearing as if repelled by an invisible force. Marcus sobbed behind me. And the voice, that horrible, ancient voice that whispered in the spaces between my thoughts, fell silent for the first time since I arrived in Meadow Creek. And then the stone cracked wide open, not like a fissure, like a door. Light poured from it, not white, but a sickly, greenish yellow glow that felt like disease made visible. It wasn't warm. It wasn't inviting. It was wrong. Every atom of my body screamed to pull away, to run, to fight. But I stayed, because in that light, I saw something I never expected. A hand, small, human, reaching out, a child's hand. My mind couldn't accept it. It didn't fit. This was supposed to be where monsters lived, where the old gods slept. Not a child, not something human, and yet that hand kept reaching. I hesitated only a second. Then, against every ounce of reason I had left, I reached forward and took it. The moment our skin touched, the world shattered. I saw everything at once. The forest, the rituals, the sacrifices, the hunters, the people who vanished, the ones who returned, changed. And at the center of it all, the truth. This wasn't a prison. This wasn't a gate. This wasn't even a war. Meadow Creek was a boundary, and I was the key. I felt the child's hand tighten in mine, impossibly strong for something so small. And before I could react, it pulled me forward, not into the stone, but through it. There wasn't pain, only pressure, as if my entire body were being compressed into a single point before expanding again all at once. The forest vanished. The cold, the night, the sounds all gone. I stood in darkness so complete it felt solid, a weight against my skin. And yet, I wasn't alone. The child was there, though I couldn't see them, only sensed the presence beside me like a flicker at the edge of consciousness. I expected fear, but what I felt was sadness, endless, suffocating sadness. Then I heard the voice Anat, the one that had whispered from the trees. But this child's, it didn't speak in words. It spoke in feelings, images, memories. I saw the stone being placed, not built. I saw people, not tribes, but something older, binding the light inside that stone, sealing the gate. And I understood the child wasn't a prisoner, it was the lock. And now that lock was dying. Not corrupted, not possessed, fading, too many years, too much neglect. The rituals hadn't sustained the child, they poisoned it. Each sacrifice had drained a little more of what remained, until only this fragment of consciousness was left, buried beneath centuries of fear and blood. I dropped to my knees in that impossible darkness. The weight of guilt wasn't mine, yet I felt it crushing me. The people who'd come before me, they hadn't protected this place. They'd fed its decay. Marcus, Silas, even the old tribes. All of them had believed they were doing what was necessary, and now I was the last, the final link in a chain that stretched back before memory itself. What do I do? I asked, though no sound left my lips. The answer came not as words, but as understanding, not sacrifice, not surrender, connection. I realized then, this wasn't a test, it was a plea. This child, the gatekeeper, wasn't trying to escape or destroy. It was begging to be remembered, to be seen, to be freed from the endless cycle of rituals that bound it here. The only thing keeping the hunters out, keeping the worlds apart, was its will, and that will was breaking. It needed something no ritual could give, a choice. So I made one. I let go of its hand. In that instant, the darkness fractured, not shattered, not exploded. It simply cracked, like ice thawing after endless winter. Light seeped in soft, golden, like dawn bleeding through cracks in a door. The child didn't vanish. It didn't cry. It simply let me go, finally, as if releasing a breath held for centuries. And then it spoke one last thing, not in fear, not in demand, in gratitude. Thank you. When I opened my eyes, I was back at the sacrifice stone. The forest stood silent around me. The masked ones were gone. So was Marcus. The stone lay broken at my feet, hollow now, its light extinguished. I didn't feel victorious, I didn't feel safe, but I felt free. Behind me, the first bird song broke the dawn. And for the first time since I arrived in Meadow Creek, I didn't feel watched. I felt alone, and I welcomed it. Morning came hollow and gray. I expected to feel relief, but the sunlight felt thin, as if the forest had learned to swallow even that. I left the cabin not because I wanted to, but because I knew the rules didn't matter anymore. The hunters, the masked ones, the whispers, they weren't circling me now. They were waiting. Somewhere deeper in the woods, past where the map lines ended, the sacrifice stone had cracked, and something had changed. I followed that feeling without thinking. My boots sank into moss. My breath fogged in the warm morning air. The silence felt like standing inside someone's lungs just before they exhale. It didn't take long to find Marcus again. Not Marcus, exactly something that wore his shape. His uniform stained and torn, his mask gone now. His face wasn't monstrous, it was worse, it was human. Tired, lost, he stood by a dry creek bed, not looking at me, not looking at anything. I called his name. He didn't flinch, just whispered words I couldn't hear at first. Then he said them louder and my blood froze. You opened it. No accusation, no anger, just acceptance. I asked him what the gate was. His answer came slowly, like dragging words up from the bottom of a well. The last door, I should have walked away. Every part of me knew that. But fear can only hold you for so long before curiosity breaks it. I asked him what he meant. He looked at me then, for the first time, eyes hollow but alive. It's not them. His voice cracked. It's us. Before I could ask, he turned and walked straight into the trees, vanishing in moments like he'd never been there. That's when the chanting started. Faint, distant, but real. I wasn't alone anymore. And whatever waited beyond those trees wasn't wearing a mask. I followed. The forest felt different now, thinner, not in the physical sense. In the way a wall feels thin when someone's breathing on the other side. The ground grew soft underfoot. Trees warped, their branches twisting unnaturally toward the clearing I didn't want to find, yet couldn't avoid. When I stepped through, the first thing I saw wasn't the hunters. It wasn't Marcus. It was the stone, broken open, bleeding light like a wound in reality. And around it, people. Not shapes, not monsters, people from the town, the sheriff, the bartender, faces I knew. Chanting words that hurt to listen to. They turned to me as one, and smiled. I realized too late that Silas was wrong. The sacrifices hadn't been meant to appease the hunters. They were meant to prepare us. I wasn't their prey. I was their successor. The gate wasn't a door to something outside. It was a door to something buried inside us all. The rituals weren't to keep the darkness locked out. They were to help us carry it within. And now, it was my turn. I ran, but the trees had moved again. I ran without knowing where I was going. Branches tore at my arms, roots grabbed my boots. The chanting behind me didn't fade. It followed. Or maybe it was inside me now. I couldn't tell. My thoughts weren't my own anymore. Every step felt heavier, like the forest itself wanted me to stop, and part of me wanted to obey. It would be so easy to give up, to kneel, to let them take my name, my voice, my skin. But something deeper, something smaller kept me moving forward. I think it was hope. Not that I'd escape, but that there was still a choice to make. I broke into a clearing I didn't recognize. That's when I saw Silas. He wasn't dead. Not yet. He was bound against a dead tree, ropes digging into skin cracked and bloodied. His eyes flickered open when he saw me, weak but not hollow. He whispered just loud enough for me to hear. "You're not supposed to run. You're supposed to choose." I knelt beside him, shaking, confused. Silas coughed blood, smiled grimly. "They want a keeper. Someone to replace Marcus, to wear the face, to guard the gate, forever. But that's not your job." His voice broke. "You're the key." I asked him what that meant. He only laughed, a dry, broken sound. "A key doesn't guard the door. A key opens it." I shook my head. I couldn't understand. I didn't want to understand. But then Silas said it. "Finish what you started. Open it all the way." I wanted to refuse. I wanted to say no. But I remembered the child's hand, the warmth fading as I let go, and I knew the truth. The gate wasn't a prison. The rituals weren't keeping the darkness out. They were keeping something trapped. And whatever that child was, whatever lived inside that light, I was the one who broke its chain. Now I had to decide whether to free it completely or die trying. Behind me, the chanting stopped. They had found me. Silas met my gaze one last time. "Whatever happens, don't look back." And then his eyes closed. I stood, unarmed, terrified, and I walked back toward the sacrifice stone, not to seal it, but to open it. The clearing felt different this time, not colder, not darker, just final. The chanting had stopped, but they were all their every face from Meadow Creek, masked and unmasked, human and no longer. They didn't rush me, didn't speak, they only waited. And in the center of it all, the stone, broken, hollow, leaking that pale, diseased light like a wound. I should have been afraid, but I wasn't. Not anymore. Fear only works when you think you have a way out. I didn't. This was the end. And I finally understood what Marcus had seen in the last days before he disappeared. Not monsters, not rituals gone wrong, but the simple, terrifying truth. The stone wasn't the door, I was. That's why they'd left me alive. That's why Marcus had led me here. The keeper wasn't a title, it was a fate. Every generation, someone was chosen to stand here. To choose, take the burden and close the gate or open it. Marcus had refused, he'd run. That's why he still walked the forest, empty. But me, I'd already touched the light. I couldn't run now, even if I wanted to. I stepped forward, slow, deliberate. The figures parted silently, not in threat, in reverence. They weren't guarding the stone. They were guiding me to it. At the shattered core, I hesitated. The crack wasn't wide enough to step through, but wide enough for a hand. I knew what waited inside. The child's hand, reaching, hoping, trusting. I remembered the warmth, the sadness, and I knew what I had to do. This wasn't about ending a curse or fighting monsters. This was about mercy. I reached into the hollow, and I took its hand. The forest vanished. No light, no sound, just warmth, like sunlight under skin spreading through me. I didn't hear the child speak. I felt it, the thank you, the goodbye, and then it let go. When I opened my eyes, the clearing was empty. The stone was gone. So were the townspeople. The trees stood silent, unmoving, and above me, dawn broke clean, soft, real. No more whispers, no more shadows, only silence. I looked down at my palm, nothing there, no burns, no scars, just skin. I was free, but I wasn't alone, because now the gate lived inside me, and the forest was finally quiet. I stayed in Meadow Creek long enough to see the summer return. The trees regrew their leaves. The wind sounded like wind again. No more voices whispered from the tree line. No more masked figures watched from the shadows. People in town started smiling again, though they never remembered why they'd stopped. Silas never woke up. I buried him near the old cabin, no headstone, no words. I think that's what he would have wanted. Marcus was never found, but I stopped searching. Whatever he had become, I knew his suffering was over. The rituals were gone, the stone was gone, and yet the truth remained. Nothing stays buried forever. Some nights, I still wake up, reaching for a hand that isn't there, a warmth that's gone. But the silence in the forest feels different now, not like something waiting to pounce, more like something resting, healing. Because in the end, Meadow Creek wasn't cursed, it wasn't haunted, it wasn't hunted, it was forgotten, trapped in rituals that no one remembered the meaning of. Generations bound to fear because no one dared to ask why, and all it took to break the cycle wasn't strength or sacrifice. It was understanding. So if you ever find yourself standing at the edge of a forest where the trees seem too tall and the silence feels too deep, remember this: not every monster is a predator. Some are prisoners. Some are children reaching out for a hand, waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to take it. The lesson of Meadow Creek isn't about survival, it's about listening to what fear hides and knowing when to let go. That's the only way to close the last door, or choose to open it. The choice is always yours.